I recently had the pleasure to catch up with Amelia and her service dog Summer, and it's been a 6-year adventure together they've had with some really interesting details. And so being able to share our catch up is my pleasure. I just wanted to kind of share how Summer came into my hands, if you will, and the nature that each of these placements that I do are sometimes serendipitous and impulsive and sometimes planned out and thoughtful. Summer was a serendipitous and impulsive decision when I went to take Franny, my Springer, to some breeders I worked with and breed her to an English Springer Spaniel named Baron, and I was able to meet a litter of puppies he had produced to help me convince me that he would be a good father. And I was really struck not only by the litter, but by this one puppy specifically, who I just spontaneously named Summer and made the decision to get her. I didn't pick her up until a couple days later when I brought Franny back for her second visit with Baron. And so she entered into Camp A Better Pet at the tender age of about 8 weeks and was 2 months. She was 4 months old when my puppies from Baron and Franny were born, and that's Shamrock, who I still have, and he himself will be 7 later this year, and his sisters Pixie and Mabel, who are both service dogs. And Summer had the opportunity at 6 months to do a puppy yoga class, which was really a lot of fun, and at 8 months was paired with Amelia on Valentine's Day of 2019. So I'm really delighted, again, as I said, to share this video with you. I hope it is helpful for those of you who are seeking a possible medical or psychiatric service dog. This is another way it can happen, and so enjoy. It is Saturday, May 24th, 2025. We're 2 days from Memorial Day of 2025, and I'm here with Amelia, who was partnered with Summer on Valentine's Day of 2019. So they've been together 6 years. And I wanted to touch base with Amelia in order to catch up and kind of go through the story, because a lot of my stories are with people who may have been partnered with their dog 6 months ago or a year ago or maybe possibly 2 years ago. But to have somebody who's so far into the dog and still using her in a regular way as a service dog and has gotten her into some very creative solutions for kind of the work she does, which I will want you to, catch us up on. But I'd love to hear from you, if you can recall from, many years ago, how old you were when you were first partnered, what led you to believe a service dog might be helpful for you, what you recall about getting connected to me specifically, and how we determined and ended up partnering Summer with you, and then just sort of share your experiences with having her grow up with you. She was 9 months old when you got her, and I got her at the same time that I bred Franny, who then had her litter, one of whom is my dog Shamrock, one of whom is Pixie, who's featured in some videos with Liz and Pixie. And then Mabel is the other one, and both Pixie and Mabel became service dogs. But Summer, being 4 months old when they were born, was like their big sister. So I have very fond memories of her. So without further ado, if you can just kind of start from the beginning and catch me up to speed so everyone can hear what it's like to have a long-term partnership with the dog who's still, we realized that she's going to be 7?
I think 7. Mm-hmm.
7 in about a month, right, in June. And take it away.
Yeah, well, I got Summer. My name is Amelia, and I got Summer when I was a junior in high school. So it was Valentine's Day, so the end of my junior year. I'm trying to remember how old I was. I was probably 17, maybe. I don't actually remember, but it was my junior year of high school. And I remember I was very excited around the time. I had wanted a service dog for about 3 or 4 years at the time. When I was a freshman in high school or going into high school, I had actually gotten the idea from someone I found on YouTube who was blind and had a guide dog. And I thought it was really interesting. And from there, I learned more about service dogs. And I realized that they could likely help me with a lot of the challenges I had with my epilepsy and poor vision. So I was interested in them. And I did a lot of research for those past 3 years during high school. I spent a lot of my time looking into it, and I did look for many organizations, but it was challenging because a lot of organizations had requirements, or you had to be of a certain age or have certain funding. And I found that very difficult, or you had to be able to travel very far, and it wasn't working out very well for me. So I had almost given up at one point, and then my mom had actually found you through a Google search. And I remember it was like January, it was like the middle of a blizzard. So she called you and she got in touch with you, and you said you actually, I remember you said you had a dog, but she was very special and you weren't willing to give her away to anyone, is what you said, and that you were going to be very selective. So I might not get her. And I wasn't sure whether I would get her or another dog, just a new puppy. So I met with you, and I actually exactly remember the first time I met you and Summer. It was at the Stone Oven in Cleveland Heights. And I remember meeting Summer, and I think she growled at some man who was wearing a hat. And I was like, thought that was kind of funny. She was only 9 months old. And I had never heard of the breed of an English Springer Spaniel before, and I didn't know what to think. But after talking to you, I really loved your philosophy. Summer is a medical alert dog, and one thing I knew from my 3 years of research to look out for is there are certain people and organizations out there who will make false promises. Mm-hmm. So a big part of a medical alert dog is the relationship you have with the dog. You must have a good relationship with your service dog. That's the foundation of any and all service dogs, but it's especially important for medical alert dogs. They need to want to work for you, and they need to have that motivation and be in touch with you. And it doesn't matter if they're able to alert. You can train them to alert to diabetes. But if they don't have a relationship with you and that motivation, they're not going to perform that job. And there are some people and organizations out there who will falsely, sadly, promise people that it will work when they shouldn't be saying that. And that's actually a red flag to look out for when looking for programs. Because if someone says that to you, you should kind of be questioning their practices and their knowledge. Because people who are professional service dog trainers may know better. But you never made that false promise, and you said things like what I just said about the importance of relationship. And that's how I knew you were very good at your job, and how I knew you had a very legitimate organization, and you weren't going to mislead me, and you were going to be honest with me and guide me, and you knew you were very qualified. And unlike some programs, I didn't have to travel that far because I lived in Cleveland and among other things, and I decided it was a good fit. Another good thing about your program that I like is that it's not just, owner training because you're there to help and you're clearly a professional, but it's also not just a program. And that's very good, especially for medical alert dogs, because again, the relationship's important. And one thing about a lot of programs is you don't get the dog until they're 2 years old. And that's okay. But if you can get the dog from an early age like I did at 9 months old, and you often give dogs earlier than that, it's just that Summer was a little unique and you didn't want to give her away that fast. But the earlier you can bond with the dog, the better. And the longer time you can spend, and if you train them, it can actually help them do their job better. And it can make building that relationship easier, and it can actually be more beneficial for the long-term relationship of the dog. So that's one thing I liked about this program, and that is why I went with it. And then Summer, you actually decided that you were willing to give me Summer. And
I didn't give her to you.
Yeah, you were willing. You were like, I guess I'll consider it. And I was thinking of getting another dog, but then I actually really liked Summer, and I could tell she had an amazing temperament. There were other things I liked about her, and I'd never heard of the breed. I also ironically kind of wanted a long-haired dog and everything. So I decided to go with her and see if it worked out, and you thought it might be a good match. So I tried her out, and it worked out really well. So I remember my 3-day sleepover. It was in February, and it went really well. I did have another dog on the home at the time. She was not very dog friendly. She was a rescue and had a lot of anxiety and behavioral problems, and as well as like dog aggression. She does to this day. She even has problems towards humans, and we were a little nervous about how she would get along with Summer. But what I quickly came to realize is that Summer was so well socialized, and so just the basic foundation of her temperament, her personality, her socialization, everything like that. She was so calm and confident that it did work out. It almost made up for a lot of Arrow's anxiety. Instead of having 2 anxious dogs that were feeding off each other and it was mounting into an issue, it just diffused the situation. And while Arrow was a little upset, Summer didn't feed into that and was able to be very socially appropriate and almost help Arrow overcome her anxiety of other dogs. And they were able to get along actually really well. And I quickly realized that all of my concerns about that weren't necessary, and it actually worked out really well. And now Summer is one of the only dogs that Arrow can be around and hang out with and be friends with without having an issue. So that went really well. And then after I got Summer, it was my junior year of high school. So then I had my senior year, and then I went to college.
Well, wait. Before you skipped to college, did you take her with you to school?
I did not take her with me to school in high school, but I did take her everywhere else I went outside of school. So anytime I went and ran errands and everything, I took her with me. Pretty much anywhere I went outside of the home, I took her with me. I also took her to evening classes I did that were through a program where you can go to college while you're in high school. Mm-hmm. And I remember I have a vivid memory of actually taking her to my evening classes with me, and she would sit with me in class. And I actually dealt with an issue with, I in general don't suffer from anxiety, but at the time I did suffer with an issue of anxiety around her behavior. So what I would do is I would go to class, I'd bring her with me, and I would get very anxious about her misbehaving in class, which she never did. And I had to actually, but what would happen is I would be anxious about this. She would pick up on that, and then she'd start whining or whatever. And then it was this cycle. And I actually had to learn to stop myself and realize she's a very well-behaved dog. She's very well socialized. She's very calm, even for her age, and that she was fine. And I needed to trust that she was fine and calm down so that she wasn't picking up on that and that she'd be calm. I do have a memory of taking an exam, and I was calm, but everyone else in the room was very anxious. And she sensed that, and she started whining during the exam. She was like 9 months old. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so funny. So I just brought a bully stick with me, and she would chew on that in class, and she was really good. But I didn't bring her with me to high school just because I was in a medical program, and it was hard to get them to allow me to bring her to the hospital with me and everything like that, because it was essentially nursing school.
Okay, so that description of the whining was sort of, she taught you to fake it till you made it.
Kind of, yeah. She just taught me that
you were worried about what other people would think.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, because, the one thing I also want you to touch on a little bit, if you don't mind, is like the community that we've developed, so that you got to meet other people who were ahead of you in terms of having their dog, and you've met people who've come after you. And you guys are able to kind of help each other and even do stuff outside of anything to do with me or my company, right?
Yeah, we do.
And I know that a lot of the anxiety that people do have about their dog's performances, that someone's going to call them out and accuse them of having a fake service dog, because people can just be idiot heads, is what I call them. And did that ever happen to you?
Yes, that's happened to me.
Okay,
yeah.
So I mean that kind of stuff would create potential for feeling uncomfortable and worried. Mm-hmm. But she's proven you wrong, that she's maintained her. Okay, so you took her to college. Let's hear how that went.
College went great, and I think one thing it did for me is that I did take her with me everywhere. So she was with me 24/7 in college. There was literally never a time I didn't bring her with me. And what that did is, I think sometimes it's easy to fall into a trap that I suffered with for a while, where I would have this anxiety about her performance. She was only a year old, let's say. And I really didn't have a reason to, because she was so good, but I was just in my head about it. Because I'm in my head about it, I either might have not taken her as many places, or I wouldn't have given her as many opportunities to prove herself, because I was doubting her essentially. And I made this mistake a lot in the beginning, is that I doubted her when she didn't deserve it. She hadn't shown me evidence that she shouldn't have been trusted, but I just was in my head. And the problem with that is that I'm not giving her an opportunity to work on anything. So what college did for me is it forced me to move past my anxiety, bring her with me everywhere. And if what I was scared of happened, where she whined and someone said, oh, you have a fake service dog, I would just have to say, oh, well, because this is a situation I'm in college, she's with me, deal with it. And It allowed me to push past it, And what it
It
did
taught you how to stand up for yourself.
right. And by bringing her with me everywhere, like I was forcing myself to move past my anxiety. By bringing her with me everywhere, she was getting an opportunity to learn to behave in class, to learn to behave in all these situations. So then she was behaving better. And then as she was behaving well in these situations, it showed me that she was capable, which then relieved my anxiety about it. And then I could trust her more. And then it just snowballed from there. And that's kind of how I was able to recover from that anxiety about her behavior. And it empowered me to feel like I could take her anywhere, and no matter what happened, I was in control of the situation, and she was in control of the situation. And the more places I took her, the more experiences I had with her, the more I built that confidence with her. And it improved our relationship, right? Because the more time we spent together, the more we worked together, the better our relationship got. And it was very positive for us. And let me tell you, the whole time I was in college, I have gotten anonymous feedback from people that she's amazing. There's this app in my college that's anonymous. You can't know who's saying what. And there have been some issues. I did transfer colleges halfway through college. There were some issues at my one institution with like fake service dogs. And someone's dog pooped in the building, and someone's dog would bite students and stuff like that.
Oh my.
And people would complain about it. I will say the one person I feel bad, she got a dog from actually kind of what I was just talking about. Someone kind of made a false promise to her, sadly, and she fell for it. And she bought like an online registration for thousands of dollars, and it didn't do anything. So I do feel bad for her, but I noticed that a lot of people left comments saying like, you better not be talking about the brown and white Springer because that dog is a queen. He said, that dog is a queen and is literally the most perfect dog ever. And everyone would back this person up. Everyone was like, yeah, that is like the number one best behaved dog I've met in my life. And it was anonymous. So that's how I knew, she was doing well. And it's true. She's literally so amazing. I mean, I can take her anywhere, and sometimes I forget she exists because I'll be at a restaurant and she'll be under the table and she's so quiet, she's so calm that I know she's there, but sometimes it's like she's not there, And so college did a lot for us. And there was literally a place I didn't bring her. And one of the challenges I faced is I was a STEM major. I studied biology and chemistry. So I would bring her to lab class with me. And sometimes the school didn't want that for safety reasons. But she is so well socialized and just has such a good temperament that she was willing to wear lab gear. So I literally got protective dog goggles and shoes and a lab coat for her to wear.
A lab coat?
Yeah, and she wore it.
I didn't know you had a lab coat. Okay.
Yeah, so she wore it in class, and people thought it was so funny. And she would just lay there calmly, and she was so good. She actually made it into the school newspaper.
Oh, you got to send me an art. Do you have a copy of that? Oh,
I need to find a copy of it because I think my professor took a photo of her in class, and then they put it on the newspaper the next year. So I need to find the copy of it because she participated. So she was so good about that. And even now, if I wanted to, I could bring her to my current job. I work in a lab, and I know that she would be good in the lab.
How much do you take her with you nowadays?
I do what I did in high school, where I currently don't take her to work just because I haven't completed the paperwork that they're asking me to. But once I complete that, then I'd bring her to work. But besides work, I take her everywhere else. So anytime I leave the house, anything, she comes with me.
Do you have any access issues from people?
I have had access issues from people. Specifically, I could call someone out, which is Burntwood Tavern. Gave me an issue one time. The other place that's given me a really rude issue was a place called Agave and Rye. And I tried going there with her, and they tried just telling me that I wasn't allowed. They tried telling me I had to sit outside, and then I told them that that's kind of illegal, and they told me it's their policy, which then you have an illegal policy. So thankfully it all worked out, and I've been able to get people to let me sit in the restaurant and stuff. But I've definitely had some issues, and even now with my job, they're just having me jump through a lot of hoops to be able to bring her to work.
Okay, so do you feel that having to defend her honor and her right to be there was something that gave you more confidence in dealing with people who are going to be kind of inappropriate with you?
Yeah, and I think something it did for me is it taught me to advocate for myself, because even though I'm advocating for her, I'm also advocating for me if you think about it. And it kind of forced me to learn to do that more, because I'm the kind of person who wouldn't. I would just give up, I would just walk away. And sometimes I'm tempted to do that, to be honest. And then I think the thing that motivates me is there's other people with service dogs, and I can't just let them do this, because even if I'm okay with it, that doesn't mean that what they're doing is okay. And I can't let them think that this is acceptable behavior. So it really has forced me to learn to stand up for myself and other people. I had somebody follow me around a supermarket one time, and they were stalking me, and it didn't bother me, honestly. That kind of thing doesn't bother me. But I know that there are a lot of people out there who have psychiatric service dogs, and they would be really triggered by something like that. And I literally turned around and said to the person, it's not okay for you to follow me around. You're not bothering me, but the next person who comes in here with a service dog, we don't know why they'd have the dog, and you could really, really hurt them. And so it's not okay to do this. It's not acceptable behavior. And I let them know that.
Wow. This is really great to hear. We haven't really talked in a couple years, right?
Yeah.
I had a real in-depth conversation. So can you share like what she does to help you with your medical challenges?
She does a lot of things. She does medical alert. So she does a lot of seizure alert for my epilepsy. But one of the biggest things she helps me with is that I'm partially blind. I have very little vision, and my vision actually is getting worse with time.
Okay.
And my vision loss is pretty similar to a disease called retinitis pigmentosa. And so it's just like looking through a straw, and it's very dim. It's very hard to see much of anything. So I can't see the ground when I walk or anything. And it's hard for me to get around and navigate places with my lack of vision. And Summer really, really helps me with that, because she usually walks about a pace ahead of me. She really does a lot of what a guide dog does, even though I technically haven't formally trained her guide work because I don't really know how to. She really has stepped into that role, and she helps me get around. She helps me avoid obstacles. She lets me know if there is a hole in the ground or a step down there. She makes sure that I walk in a straight line, and she just helps me get around places. And that's the biggest thing she helps me with, I would say. And then, she's a medical alert dog. So if there's ever anything going on with me, she'll let me know. And then I can either take medication or get to a safe space. And she's really saved me before. There actually have been times where I have really severe epilepsy, and it's actually lethal. And there have been times where I'm having seizures, and I could have even died, honestly. But she actually went and got my mom and told my mom. And then my mom knew that I was having a seizure and could come help me. But without her, that might have not happened.
Wow.
And there have been times where I was actually recently, I guess, being diagnosed with a severe food allergy that I didn't know I had. And what I now know is happening is I've actually been experiencing anaphylaxis and anaphylactic shock. And there have been times where I'm actually in like anaphylactic shock and I'm fainting. I can't get up off the floor without fainting. And she has been able to do things like retrieve my phone so that I can call someone and get other people's attention and things like that. And so she has really saved me in those situations.
Now, did you teach her that, or did she pick that up on her own?
She picked that up on her own, because this is something I also learned, dogs that are trained through positive reinforcement only, they have a lot more confidence than with other training methods, it's been found. And another thing that's been found it does is it actually lets them do this thing called generalization, where you can teach them one skill in one context and they know that. But because they have so much confidence and ability, they actually are smart enough to take that and generalize it to other situations. So you can teach them to retrieve an item at home. And if they get really good at that, you can actually be out like in public in a different setting and ask them to do the same thing, and they're able to do it because they're able to generalize skills. Mm-hmm. So even though I never taught her to, respond to anaphylaxis, I did teach her to retrieve my phone. And because I have a good relationship with her, she knows there's something wrong with me. She knows I need help. She knows how to get my phone. And even though it's a totally different situation, she still is able to do it because she has that ability.
Have you ended up in the hospital from some of the seizures and the anaphylaxis that you had?
Yes.
And did she go with you to the hospital?
Yeah, she comes with me to the hospital, yes. Mm-hmm. I can't sadly take care of her by myself because they will not let me get out of bed, but other people will help me take care of her, and she'll be with me in the hospital, and she's very good.
How does that help you?
It just makes, I don't like being in the hospital. I'm not a huge fan. I don't know who is. And it makes me just feel a lot better. I definitely find it comforting, like I'm at home, or at least I have her with me. And she just makes me feel like more of a person, like more of me and who I am, than just some patient in the hospital. And she just definitely makes me feel better, like I'm not alone, and that she's almost like a part of me, honestly, and so it's nice to have that.
So your job now, that's a full-time job,
Yeah.
postgraduate. Are you planning on any more schooling?
Yeah, I would like to go to graduate school. I'd like to go to medical school. I'd like to go to what's called MD PhD school. So I get it's medical school, and then it's also you just get a PhD, like graduate school as well. And
You
that's
aim to do what?
Become a physician. I don't know what specialty, probably something non-surgical, because I think it's boring. And maybe sometimes I think about immunology. Sometimes I think about what's it called? Like cancer. What's blanking on it? Anesthesiology is another one I think of. So, but I like all the specialties. I'm not certain. I'm going to go to medical school and do rounds, and then I'm going to decide from experience.
Mm-hmm.
I also really liked nephrology, which is like kidneys. I really liked that when I shadowed a nephrologist, and I'm kind of interested in that. But I'm not going to make a decision before I experience everything. And then my PhD, I'm not sure, but probably like microbiology and immunology or something related to that, because that's probably my biggest passion in research. So that's what I'm thinking.
So overall, when you think back to the years of research you did as a junior high student or an early high school student, and then ultimately getting partnered with Summer, how much do you feel like she's contributed to the success of where you're at today?
Very greatly, because the truth of the matter is I tried having a teacher at my one school tell me that I couldn't bring her to class. And then I said to the teacher, well, then how do I get to class? Because there are certain places that I cannot navigate without her because of my vision. And I currently haven't learned to use a cane or anything like that to get around. So I told the teacher, either you need to let me bring her, or you need to get a person to guide me to class, because there's no way. So I just know for a fact that the one school that I transferred to, the school that I graduated from, a lot of their buildings aren't accessible to me as someone with limited vision. It's very hard for me to get around certain buildings that they've made because of the way they've made them. And without Summer, I would not have been able to get to pass 2 classes or around the school by myself, for a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And even today, there are places that I would not be able to go by myself without her. Like, I could not get around Beechwood Mall. I probably could not go to the doctor. Like, I can't walk around a hospital. There are all sorts of places that I cannot navigate without her. And so because of that, in a lot of ways, she made my education possible, because it also isn't very safe for me to be alone due to my seizures and everything. And so she made it possible for me to live by myself and to be able to go to college and be able to get to classes and succeed in my education. And because of Summer, I was able to write a thesis. I was able to graduate with a bachelor's degree, and I've been able to now start my career. And the same will probably be true of graduate school. And then that's why I think about, when she retires, what will I do without Summer? I don't know, but I will figure it out.
She basically then, if I'm hearing you correctly, gave you your independence, gave your parents the confidence to let you have your independence. You described her as having basically saved your life more than once.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been anonymously told that she's the best dog anyone has, in responding to that, anonymous place, have just, kveld about her. Kveld is the Yiddish word for just like said really, 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 really great things about her. So can we see her? I know she's nearby. So
yeah.
Let's see if we can say a quick hello.
She's over here relaxing.
Hey, Summer!
Wake up. She's very calm, I guess. Are you gonna wake up?
She's having her own thoughts.
She's got all of her favorite toys. She loves stuffed animals. She's a very sweet, loving dog, and she doesn't chew things. But she loves carrying around and cuddling with stuffed animals. You gonna say hi?
I'm curious when you end up not taking her with you everywhere because you haven't navigated that job part of it yet. Does she have any problems being left home alone?
No, she's great home alone. I would say I'm the one who has problems because I feel bad because she's used to being with me everywhere. I think in some ways she knows that I need her help, and I think she is smart and she knows that. And it makes me sad to not be with her because she's a part of me. And but for her, I don't actually think as much as she is attached to me, it's interesting because she doesn't have separation anxiety. And I know because my other dog has severe separation anxiety. So I have experience with that. And as much as she is very attached to me, she's so calm and she's so confident just as a dog that she doesn't have that problem. I can leave her at home and she just relaxes. She likes to sit on this one couch and look out the window, and she'll hang out with my mom and she'll just be calm like this. And we have fun when I get home, and then I work her in the evening and everything. But she's so versatile. She's fine by herself. She's calm. She's collected. She's great with me. She's really just so versatile. She's good at any situation. Even when I do get her professionally groomed, the groomer has amazing things to say about her. They say this is the best dog we've had, all year because she's so just adaptable to every situation.
She and Shamrock and Pixie and Mabel were the first dogs that went to a yoga class when they were 8 weeks old and she was 4 months old. And since then, I've gone a couple more times to take a litter of puppies to go to yoga for socialization. And I really loved her behavior in the yoga class. And when you keep talking about how calm she is, which I know fundamentally she is, but when she was a puppy, she was really kind of mischievous.
And she is, by the way, now she's very goofy. It's funny because she's calm, but she's very goofy and like silly and sweet, I would say so she's mischievous now. So the other day she likes to take my socks, and yesterday I had clean laundry on my bed and I come upstairs and she literally goes over and steals them off my bed and runs around with them.
So she still has a quirk of her original quirks. Now,
Yeah.
The only other thing I want to ask with respect to the role that she's provided for you, we've talked about her medical alerting and her ability to be well-mannered in all the different places that you've taken her to, and that she has this job to be aware of you with respect to medical alerting, but like when you were in class or at a meal in a restaurant, she would just lie quietly out of the way, the downstay out of the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that she helped you make connections with people that you might not otherwise have had you not had a dog at your side?
Maybe, probably. Not as much as other people. I know some people with service dogs that's really helped them. So not as much as some people, but there are definitely a few people. Like I think there was a girl at my school who also had a service dog, and I connected with her more, I think, than I otherwise would have if I didn't have Summer. I think there's people who, have come up and talked to me that otherwise wouldn't have because of Summer. I think there's people who also have avoided me because of Summer, right? So it's like a trade-off. But she has helped. I would say one of my best friends, Corinne, comes to mind. She's in school to be a veterinarian. And we both really bonded over Summer because not only do we both have a dog, but Summer was there, I guess. And so we could talk about her and stuff. But I'm sure that there are people who talk to me because of Summer, yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to share, like for anybody who might be considering what you considered way back when you were in junior high, that you were able to accomplish in your second half of your junior year of high school?
I would say just, I know that it's tempting to want to focus on a list of things that you want them to be able to do for you or tasks, but I would recommend not getting so caught up in that and remember that it's a dog, it's not a robot, and focus more on the fact that what's important is you want the right make and model of a dog. You need to get a dog with the right temperament that is kind of innately a good fit for what you want to do, because you can't train everything, and their temperament is a lot to do with it. And I wouldn't focus so much on a checklist of things you want them to be able to do. I would really focus on their relationship, their personality, your personality, and I would definitely prioritize that and focus more on that than anything, and other things will naturally follow. And I recommend that people have that mindset early on, and I think they'd be more successful.
So overall, any of the limitations that you might be faced with having the responsibility for a dog 24/7 have been far outweighed by all the benefits that you've had in your relationship with her so far, with many
Yes,
years
for
left,
me.
hopefully
Yeah.
many years left to develop more adventures. Okay,
Mhm.
well, thank you so much for participating. And I would love it if you can share some of the photos, like her in her gown and goggles and boots
Yes.
and things like that. So thanks so much, Amelia, for being willing to share everything. And yeah, we'll stay in touch. Maybe we'll get together this summer at some point.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. That's a
All
goal of
right.
mine. Yeah.
Great talking to you. Thanks.